Use the following information to answer the question below. Standard 7 pupils put equal amount of different types of soil P, Q, R and S into 4 identical tins. Each tin had a hole at the bottom. They then poured equal amount of water into each tin. All the water that passed through the hole was collected into identical containers as shown in the diagram below. We have P with the water, Q with the water, R and S. Which one of the following statement is correct? Therefore, the question is requiring us to know more about soil capacity. Soil capacity is the ability of the soil to retain water. Different types of soil retain different amounts of water. For example, we have clay soil, we have sand, and then we have loam. When you look at the three types of soil, clay retains more water than sand and loam. Sand retains less water, but when it comes to loam, it retains medium. That is not more nor less, it is in between. Therefore, looking at the experiment that was performed, we can get the correct statement. Soil Q retained more water than R. When you look at the water levels in the container, it tells us which soil retained more water than the other. Looking at Q, more water was collected, meaning that less was retained. Then we have R. When you look at the amount of water here, it is less than that in Q. Therefore, the statement is wrong. B. Soil S retained the smallest amount of water. Here we have soil S, then the water that was collected, meaning that S retained more water. More water was retained because less water was collected. Therefore, the statement that soil S retained smallest amount of water is wrong. Actually, it is the one that retained more water. Then we have soil Q retained the smallest amount of water. Looking at the experiment Q, the amount of water that drained in Q was the highest. Therefore, the statement is correct since less water was retained and more water was allowed to pass through. Therefore, the correct statement there was that soil Q retained the smallest amount of water. Use the following information to answer question below. Standard 7 pupils put equal amount of different types of soil P, Q, R and S into 4 identical tins. Each tin had a hole at the bottom. They then poured the equal amount of water into each tin. All the water that passed through the hole was collected into identical containers as shown in the diagram below. P, Q, R and S. From the experiment above, soil R is likely to be, when you look at the soil, we have different types of soil. We have clay soil, we have sand soil, and then we have loam. All these different types of soil, they drain water in different rates. Clay soil has the lowest drainage. They allow water to pass through. It allows little water to pass through. Then we have sand soil as the highest drainage. Then loam soil as the medium. Therefore, looking at the amount of water that passed through, then we can determine which type of the soil was R. Looking at S, it allowed very little amount of water to pass through, so most of the water was retained. So soil S is likely to be clay soil. Then we have soil Q, allowed more water to pass through, so the soil was likely to be sandy soil. Then we have the one that is not more or less, it is medium, that is soil R. It is neither low neither high, it is in between. This one is likely to be loam soil, which is a mixture of sand and clay. Therefore, the answer there is C, that is loam soil. Some pupils from Changa Primary School set up the apparatus as shown in the diagram below. Identical tubes, sandy soil, clay soil, loam soil, water, and then cotton wool. They then measured the rise of water in each type of the soil after every 10 minutes. They plotted their results as shown in the graphs below. We have height of the water in millimeters, time. Then we have the graph there. The soil types represented by the graph X, Y, and Z are most likely to be. So when we look at the experiment, it was try to determine the capillarity in the soil. Capillarity is the ability of water to rise in soil. Water rises in different rates in different types of soil. We have three different types of soil. We have sandy soil, we have clay soil, and then we have loam soil. Loam is just a mixture of sand and clay. When it comes to capillarity, clay soil has the highest capillarity, while sandy soil has the lowest. Then we have the loam soil. It has medium capillarity since it mixes the properties of sandy soil and clay soil. Therefore, looking at the way the graph was plotted, the one with the highest capillarity here is clay soil, then X is loam soil, and then we have Z should be the sandy soil. So X, Y, and Z. So starting with X is loam, Y clay, and Z sand. X. Therefore, the correct answer there is loam, clay, and sand. Loam, clay, and sand. Therefore, the correct answer there is C. Kichungi wanted to filter some muddy water. She poured it into a filter which was arranged as shown in the diagram below. So we have the filter: fine sand, coarse sand, pebbles, powdered charcoal, and cotton wool. The main purpose of the charcoal in this filter was to, when you look at the filter, It was supposed to remove the soil particles that had meant the water to be muddy. Therefore, we had the fine sand that collected now the leaves and any other foreign material and any other soil particles that was there. Then finally we had all that water passing through the coarse sand, pebbles, and finally the powdered charcoal. The work of the powdered charcoal was to absorb the color of the muddy water. It was to absorb the color of the muddy water. Therefore, the correct answer was to absorb the color. Which one of the following statement about air in the soil is correct? When you look at the soil is made up of different components that include water, air, humus, living organisms, and mineral particles. The size of the mineral particles is the one that now determines the amount of water, the amount of air that is found in that particular soil. We call them the soil particles. So when you look at different types of soil, that is sandy soil, we have clay soil, and then we have loam soil. Sandy soil has the largest soil particles. Clay soil has the smallest soil particles, and loam soil has a medium soil particles. So the larger the soil particles, the larger or the amount of air that is held in that soil. That means that the sandy soil has the largest air amount in that soil, followed by loam, and then finally clay. Therefore, looking at the statements here, we have loam soil contains more air between its particles than sandy soil, which is wrong, since loam soil is just in between sand and clay. B. Clay soil has the highest amount of air between its particles. It is wrong, since clay soil has the smallest soil particles, so the space in between the soil particles is very small, so it has very little air in between. See, sandy soil has the highest amount of air in between the soil particles. That statement is correct, since sandy soil has the largest soil particles. Therefore, more air is held, or more air spaces or large air spaces is left in between the soil particles. Therefore, pupils investigating how fast water passes through different types of soil set up the experiment as shown below. Which of the following is least important for this experiment? When you look at the experiment, is try to investigate drainage in different soils. So these soil include sand soil, clay soil, and then loam. These soils, they have different ability to allow water to pass through them. We have the sandy soil, the clay soil, and the loam. The rate at which now they allow water to pass through is determined by the sizes of the soil particles. So when we are carrying out experiments to investigate drainage in these different types of soil, there are things that need to be the same. One is that there must be equal amount of soil, but of different types. The soil should be of the same amount but of different types. That is, should be clay, sand, and loam. 2. The size of the funnel. The size of the funnel should be the same. 3. Time allowed for the experiment should be the same. Amount of water added should also be the same. But it is not a must that you use the same size of the collecting jar. You can use different sizes of collecting jar but pour the amount in the same measuring cylinder. So the only that is not required, or it's least important, that is the size of the collecting jar. Therefore, looking at our answers there, we have using the same size of jar in each case. An experiment was set up to investigate capillarity in different soils as shown in the diagram below. We have clay, we have loam, we have sand, and then we have the mixture of sand, clay, and loam. Then we have water and cotton wool. In which tube would water rise to the highest if the setup was left to stand for 12 hours? Therefore, looking at the experiment which is trying to test about capillarity, that is the ability of the soil to allow water to rise in it, then different types of soils, that is clay, loam, and sandy, they have different abilities or rate to allow that water to rise. Therefore, when you look at clay soil, it has the highest capillarity. Sandy soil has the lowest. Then we have loam soil that has the medium capillarity. Therefore, when the soil, when the experiment was left for 12 hours, the soil that could have allowed water to rise the highest was the clay soil, that is Roman 1, since the clay has the highest capillarity among the three types of soils. Therefore, the correct answer there is A, that is clay soil. Which one of the following properties of soil does not depend on the size of its particle? Most of the properties of soil depends on the size of soil particles. it is true that different types of soil have different properties, and all this one is determined by the size of the soil particles in each soil. For example, we have sandy soil has large soil particles. Then we have clay soil, it has small soil particles. And then we have loam soil, which has medium soil particles. Therefore, when we look at all those properties of those different types of soil, they are determined by the size of soil particles in each. These physical characteristics or properties that are found in that soil include: 1. Drainage. Drainage in the three types of soil, if I now it is high in sandy soil, low in clay soil, and medium in loam soil. We have others like capillarity, water retention, texture, that is the roughness or smoothness of the soil particles. Therefore, when you look at those physical properties of those different types of soil, they are determined by the size of the soil particles. Therefore, the property that is not determined by the size of the soil particle, it is the color of that soil. But when it comes to drainage, water retention, capillarity, and the texture, all are determined by the size of the soil particle in each soil. Equal amount of different types of soil J, K, L, and M were put into 4 identical glass containers. Equal volumes of water were then added to each container. After all the air had escaped from the soil in each container, the levels of water in the containers were as shown in the diagram below. J, K, L, and M. Which one of the following conclusion about the soils is correct? When you look at the soils, that is soil J, K, L, and M, they have different volumes of water. It is good to note that each soil has different size of soil particles. We have sandy soil with the largest soil particles. We have loam, which is a mixture of sandy soil and clay soil as medium. Then we have clay soil, which has smallest. These soil particles, depending with the size of the soil particles, when you put them together, they leave either large air spaces or small air spaces. Since sandy soil has the largest soil particles, it has large air spaces. Loam soil has medium, clay soil as the smallest. Therefore, after water was poured in those soil samples and then allowed to settle for some minutes, then the levels of water after the air escapes had to go down. So the one with sandy soil, which has the largest air spaces, was the least, while the one that had the clay soil, which has the smallest air spaces, had the highest. Therefore, using that information, now we can look at the choices. Soil L had more air spaces in between the soil particles than K. So we compare L and K. So K had less air spaces compared to L. So soil L had more air spaces than K. That one is correct. Looking at B, soil M had the most air spaces. M, that is wrong, since when you look at the level of water, it means that it had very small air spaces in it. Soil K had less air spaces in between the particles than M. So we compare K and M, K and M. So M had less but not K. Then looking at J had the least air spaces. J had the least air spaces in between the soil particles. It is wrong, since the one that had the least, it is M. Therefore, the correct answer there is A, that is soil L had more air spaces in between its particles than soil K. An experiment was set up as shown in the diagram below. We have water, soil, cotton wool, and measuring cylinder. The experiment was to investigate. When you look at the experiment, it was used to determine one, water holding capacity of different types of soil, or it can be used to determine drainage of different types of soil. Drainage is there now the ability of different types of soil to allow water to pass through it. Therefore, looking at the experiment, it was either to investigate the two properties of soil. Looking at the statements, we have water retention by different types of soil. Capillarity, it cannot be used to determine capillarity, so capillarity is wrong. Amount of air, wrong and humus. So the correct answer is water retention by different types of soils. The setups shown in the diagram below were used to investigate how water moves up in different types of soil. We have soil K, soil L, glass tube, container water, and cotton wool. Which one of the following need not to be the same in both setups? When you look at the setup, it was investigating capillarity. Capillarity, it is the ability of the soil to allow water to rise in it. So different types of soil have different capillarity, or allows water to rise at a different rate. When you are carrying out capillarity, there are things that need to be the same. Which are things that need to be the same? One, we have the funnel, the glass tubes. Glass tubes. Glass tubes should be of the same diameter. They should be of the same diameter. Two, we have equal amount of soil, but the soil should be of different types. Therefore, there should be clay, sand, and loam, but they should be of equal amount. 3. The size of the cotton wools. The size of the cotton wool that is used at the base ear should be the same. 4. Time allowed. Time allowed for the experiment should be the same. So if you leave it for 5 minutes, every cell should be 5 minutes. But when you are carrying this experiment, the size of the collection or the size of the container, should not be the same. It's not a must to be the same. So you can opt to use different sizes of containers, but the glass tube should be of the same diameter, different types of soil but of equal amount, allow the same time, and finally the cotton wool that you put at the base should be the same. Therefore, looking at our answers there, the correct answer there is the size of the container. Standard 5 pupils collected different types of soils from their home areas for experiments. One of the soil samples was found to have the following characteristics: has very fine soil particles, retain more water than all others, makes thinner and longer ribbons than all the others. Which one of the following types of soil has the characteristics listed above? When you look at the different types of soil, they have different characteristics. These characteristics or properties are determined by the sizes of soil particles in each type of the soil. So we have clay soil. Clay soil has small soil particles. It is also sticky when wet, and that is the reason it is used to make ribbons. It has the highest capillarity. It has the lowest drainage. And it cracks when dry. Then we have the sand soil. Sandy soil has large soil particles. It has large air spaces. It has the highest drainage. It has the lowest capillarity. Then when you look at the loam soil combines the characteristics of both the clay and sand. So it usually have medium soil particles, medium drainage, etc. Therefore, looking at the characteristics that were listed or were found in that sample of the soil, it was entirely for the clay soil. Clay soil. Clay soil is the one that makes the thinner ribbons. Reason, it is sticky when wet. Then when you look at retains more water than others, so we have said now it has the lowest drainage. Then the other one is that has very fine soil particles, that is, it has small soil particles. Therefore, the correct answer is clay soil. In which of the following samples of soil does water drain fastest? When you look at these different samples of soil, that is sand, this soil, clay soil, and loam, all of them, they have different soil properties or characteristics, and all this one is determined by the size of the soil particles. When you look at sandy soil as the largest soil particles, clay soil as the smallest, while now loam soil as the medium. It has the medium because it combines those of sandy soil and clay soil. When it comes to some of the characteristics like drainage, sandy soil has the highest drainage. And clay soil has the lowest. Then we have loam soil as medium drainage. This is because sandy soil has large soil particles that have large air spaces that allows water to pass through quickly through those air spaces that are left. Therefore, sand soil has the highest drainage and allows water to drain through it fastest or quickly. How can water retention ability of sandy soil be improved? Water retention of different types of soil can be improved, and mostly in clay, by adding humus. When you add humus to any type of the soil, it improves soil structure. The way the particles are held together. So if it improves the soil structure, it is going to improve other physical properties or characteristics like drainage, texture, water retention, and capillarity. So therefore, the best way in which now we can improve the water retention ability in sandy soil is adding manure, that is by adding organic manure. Some pupils wanted to make ribbons using different mixtures of soil and water. From which mixture would they find it most difficult to make long ribbons? It is good to note that the only type of the soil that can make good ribbons, it is clay soil. It makes good ribbons because clay soil is sticky when wet. Therefore, any mixture with clay, it could make good ribbons, but the one without clay, then it will be very hard to make long ribbons. So when you look at our A, we have clay, which is very good, and then we have sand. It will be able to make ribbons, while the clay, it will make the sand stick. Clay and loam, the same. Loam, it's a mixture of clay and sand. Therefore, there will be more clay in the mixture, therefore it will be easy to make ribbons. Then when you look at the mixture of clay, loam and sand, loam soil here is a mixture of clay and sandy soil. Therefore, more clay in this mixture will also make it possible to make long ribbons. But when it comes to sand and loam, it means that here we have sand, soil and loam and clay. It means that there will be more sand than clay. Therefore, it will be very difficult for the pupils to make long ribbons. The setup shown in the diagram below was used to compare the amount of air present in different types of soil. Which one of the following need not be the same? Here, it is good to note that different types of soil particles have different sizes of soil particles. When you look at clay soil as small soil particles, that translates that it has small air spaces. Then we have loam soil. It has medium soil particles, meaning that it has medium air spaces. Then we have sandy soil. It has large soil particles. Therefore, it has large air spaces. Therefore, when we are comparing now the amount of air in different types of the soil, one, the container needs to be the same. Then equal amount of soil, but the soil should be of different types. You put equal amount of water, and also time factor, time allowed should be the same. So the one that needs not to be the same, it is the size of the soil particles, since each soil has different sizes of soil particles. Which type of soil is most difficult to cultivate when wet? We have different types of soil, that is sandy soil, we have clay, and then we have loam. It is good to note that loam, it is good for cultivation. It is good because it has humus. Also, it has medium capillarity drainage since it's a mixture of clay and sand. Then when it comes to clay soil, it is sticky when wet. It gets waterlogged. So you find out it becomes very hard to cultivate when it is wet, since it is sticky when wet. This is because it does not allow water to pass through it quickly. It has the lowest drainage. Therefore, most of the water is usually retained. When you compare it with the sandy soil that has the highest drainage, because of its large soil particles, it allows water to pass through it quickly. Therefore, it is easy to cultivate. So the most difficult soil to cultivate it is clay soil, since it gets waterlogged and sticky when wet, since it does not allow water to pass through it quickly. A group of pupils set an experiment in which they added equal amount of water to the soil samples 1, 2, and 3. Their results are shown in the diagram below. We have 1, 2, and 3. From the result, the soil samples 1, 2, 3 are most likely to be. When you look at the soil samples and the experiment that was conducted, it was investigating drainage, which is the ability of the soil to allow water to pass through. It is good to note that we have the sandy soil, which has the highest drainage. It allowed more water to pass through. So the likelihood of one being sandy soil. Then we have clay soil. It has the lowest. It allowed very little amount of water to pass through. Therefore, Roman 2, it was clay soil. Then we have loam soil, which has a medium drainage, since it's a mixture of sand and clay, so it allowed medium amount of water to pass through. So 3 was loam. Therefore, look it under the answer, we have sand, clay, and loam. That is C. Fatuma and Mandima wanted to find out the soil samples that retains more water. They added equal amount of water to clay and sand. The setup was as shown in the diagram below. What mistake did the pupils make in the setting up of the experiment? When you look at the experiment here, it was trying to define drainage in different types of soil, and also water capacity, that is the ability of the soil to retain water. So when you are carrying the experiment, some things need to be the same, like amount of water, same size of funnel, equal amount of soil, equal time, should be allowed. It is good to note that using different types of collecting jar, it was not a mistake, because they could use a standard measuring jar to measure the amount of water that had passed through. Therefore, the mistake that they made during the experiment was using different amounts of soil. We have said now the amount of soil should be the same but of different types, that is clay and sand. Which one of the following types of soil is suitable for a site for construction of a fish pond? When you look at a fish pond, it is usually located in areas with clay soil. It is located in areas with clay soil because 1. Clay soil, it is sticky when wet. 2. It does not drain water easily. Due to those two factors or properties, it is the reason why most of the fish ponds are constructed in the areas with clay soil. Therefore, the correct answer there, it will be clay soil. The diagram below shows amount of water that drained through equal samples of soil. Which one drained through a sample obtained from an ant hill? Mostly the ant hill are made of clay soil. They are made from clay soil because 1. Clay soil is usually sticky when wet, and also it is good to know that it cracks when dry. Also, clay soil has fine particles. It is due to these properties that makes it easy for the termites or ants to build the ant hill. The stickiness of the clay soil enables now those soil particles to stick together, forming the ant hill. Therefore, the sample was obtained from the sample D. Why? When you look at the drainage, clay soil has the lowest drainage, meaning that it allows very little amount of water to pass through it. It retains most of the water. Therefore, the correct answer there is D, because it has drained very little amount of water. Therefore, the soil has some water and it is sticky when wet. Therefore, it can stick together, forming now the ant hill. Which one of the following is not needed in an experiment to determine the capillarity in different soils? When you talk of the capillarity, it is the ability of the soil to allow water to raise. In other words, it is the raising of water in different types of soil. Therefore, when you are carrying out the experiment on capillarity, there are some of the materials that you need. Some of the materials will include the biopen casing, Also, you will require cotton wool. If you cannot get a cotton wool, then you can use a piece of cloth. Also, you will require a basin. You will also require a watch, and also finally different types of soil. Therefore, when carrying out capillarity, you do not require anything to do with the measuring cylinder. Here we just need the biro pen casing. Then inside the biro pen casing, then you'll have a basin containing water where you are going to stand your biro pen casing. Then a piece of cotton wool or cloth, and then inside there you have different types of soil particles. So those are the materials that are required when you are carrying out capillarity. Therefore, since we are not measuring the amount of water that has raised, then you don't require a measuring cylinder. Which one of the following types of soil has the highest water holding capacity? When you talk of water holding capacity, it's one of the physical properties of soil. We have three different types of soil. We have the sandy soil, we have the clay soil, and then we have the loam soil. All these physical properties of soil are determined by the size of soil particles. Therefore, some of these physical properties or characteristics of the soil, they include water holding capacity, or what you call water retention. Also drainage, capillarity, and then texture. All those four properties are determined by the size of the soil particles. Therefore, the soil with the highest water holding capacity is the soil that does not allow a lot of water to drain through it. So when we look at the three different types of soil, we have the soil with different soil particles. So we have sandy soil with the largest soil particles. We have clay soil with the smallest, and then we have loam, which has the medium. It is in between small and large. There, since it's a mixture of clay and sandy soil. So when we look at clay soil has the lowest drainage. It does not allow water to pass through it quickly. So most of water is usually retained in the soil. Therefore, it has the highest water holding capacity. Therefore, the correct answer there, it will be the clay soil. Equal samples of soil were obtained from a garden, forest, playing field, and dry riverbed. They were heated thoroughly for the same length of time. The samples of the soil most likely to have lost the greatest mass was that obtained from the. So when you look at the experiment, we call it the eating soil experiment. It is used to determine the amount of humus in the soil. When you burn, for example, if you have a test tube there, then inside it you have the soil, then you subject it to it. You will notice that there is smoke that comes out. That smoke that comes out, it is humus that is being burned. So here we have garden soil, forest, playing field, and dry riverbed. Starting with the dry riverbed, this one was likely to be sandy soil, and sandy soil has very little humus, so this one did not lose a lot of mass. Then from there we have playing field, also in the playing field the soil was likely to be a mixture of maybe clay and sand. Therefore, in the playing field you'll find out there is no much humus. But when it comes to garden soil and the forest, we start with the forest. In the forest there are leaves that dries up. When these leaves dry, they decompose and then form humus. So the soil from the forest, there was the likelihood of the one being the one that lost a lot of mass, since it has a lot of humus that comes from the decayed leaves. When you look at the garden soil, it might not contain much humus as compared to the forest soil, since maybe some of the humus in the garden had been used up. Therefore, the soil that could have lost a lot of mass, it should be the forest soil. Equal amounts of clay, loam, and sand were mixed. The mixture was then placed in a transparent bottle. Then water was added. The contents were shaken and allowed to settle. The most likely arrangement of the layers of the soil sample would be. So when we look at these three types of soil, that is the clay, sand, and loam, they have different soil particles. When you look at sand soil, sandy soil has the largest soil particles. Then we have clay soil. Clay soil has the smallest soil particles. Then we have loam. Loam has medium soil particles. They are neither large nor small. They are in between. So when you put these soils in the same container, then add water and shake, Then the layers of this soil, they are going to be arranged according to the sizes of the soil particles. Therefore, when you look at the mixture, whereby we have the container there, then you add water, we shall have the clay, the sand soil coming to the bottom because of the soil particles, that is sandy soil. Then the second layer will be the layer of loam soil, which has medium soil particles. Then the final and the last layer there, it will be a layer of clay soil. The reason it's because it has small particles. So the small particles are the ones that are going to appear at the top. Therefore, the correct answer there, or the correct arrangement there, it is the arrangement in sand, loam and clay, that is B. Which one of the following types of soils has the highest percentage of large soil particles? When you look at these soils, we have three types of soils, that is, we have sandy soil, then we have clay soil, and then we have loam soil. All these soil, they have different soil particles. When you look at the soil particles of each, sand soil has the largest soil particles. Then we have clay, it has small soil particles. When you look at loam soil, the particles are neither large or small, so they are in between. So we talk of it has medium soil particles. When it comes to these particles, you find now, since this one has the largest soil particles, it has less humus. This one has medium humus, but when you talk of the loam soil, it has humus, and that is the reason it is good for cultivation. So looking at these three different types of soil, the one that has the highest percentage of large soil particles, it is sand soil. Which one of the following determines the rate at which water drains through soil? When you talk of the drainage, drainage is the ability of soil to let water pass through. Therefore, when you look at the three different types of the soil, that is the sandy soil, loam soil, and clay soil, all of them, they do not allow soil water to pass through them at the same rate. We have soil that allows water to pass through it quickly, and there is another one that will not, or will take more time to allow the same water to pass through. All these, it is determined by the sizes of the soil particles. So when you look at the soil particles, sandy soil has the largest soil particles. Then loam soil, it has medium soil particles. Then clay soil has the smallest. So when you look at the sand soil, because of large soil particles, when you put them together, they leave large air spaces. These large air spaces allows water to pass through them quickly. Therefore, it has the highest drainage. All these physical properties of soil that include drainage, capillarity, texture, all are determined by the size of the soil particles. So the soil with the largest soil particles has the highest drainage. Therefore, the correct answer is A. That is the size of the soil particles. The setup below were used to determine capillarity in soil samples E, F, G, and H. We have tube, trap, and then water. That is E, F, G, and H. The correct conclusion cannot be drawn from the results of this experiment because, therefore, when we look at capillarity, the ability of the soil to allow water to rise. Ability of soil to allow water to rise. So different types of soil raise water or allows water to rise at a different rate depending on the sizes of the soil particles. So when carrying out the experiment on capillarity, there need some things that need to be the same. Some of the things that need to be the same will include 1. Time allowed, 2. Tubes should be of the same diameter, there should be different types of soils but of equal amount. Also cotton wool, it is required. Therefore, all those are some of the things that need to be the same. When you look at the trap and the amount of water, it does not depend, provided you allow equal time, same diameter of the tubes, different types of soil but of equal amount, and then the cotton wool. Therefore, looking at the experiment, you'll find now when you look at the tubes are not of the same size. This one is large than this, and this one, you compare this one and this one, so the tubes are not of the same size. So since the tubes are not of the same size, they cannot guarantee the same rate of raising water or allowing water to rise. Therefore, they could not make the correct conclusion or get the correct result from this experiment because they used tubes of different diameter or sizes. Therefore, the correct answer there is D. Tubes were of different sizes. Which one of the following is a characteristics of sand soil? Sandy soil, when you look at these three different types of soil, that is clay, sandy and loam, they have different characteristics. So when you look at the characteristics of sandy soil has one, large soil particles. Two, it has large air spaces. Three, it has the highest drainage. It has the lowest capillarity. It has rough texture. When you look at it, it has the lowest water retention. It is used for construction. Therefore, using those characteristics, then we can able to choose the one that belongs to the sandy soil. We have good drainage, have high water retention. We have said now it has lowest water retention. Cracks when dry, it does not crack when it is dry. Have high mineral content. Therefore, when you look at it, we have said now it has the highest drainage, so have good drainage. We immerse a small container filled with soil into a basin of water. Bubbles were observed. Which one of the following explain observation meant? When you look at the experiment is trying to determine the components of the soil. So soil is made up of 5 components. The 5 components of the soil will include: there is air in the soil, there is water in the soil, there are mineral particles in the soil, there is humus in the soil, and finally there are living organisms in the soil. Therefore, we carry out experiment to determine these 5 components of soil. Therefore, according to the pupils, they took a container, small one, they put soil on it, and then they had dropped it in water. Then they saw bubbles of water coming out. Bubbles of air. So what was the main reason why they saw the bubbles coming out? When you look at the different types of soil that we have, all of them, they have different sizes of the soil particles. When these soil particles combine together, they leave air spaces in between them. These spaces that are left between them, they are occupied by air. And since now water is more dense than the air, when the container was immersed in the water displaced the air that was in between those soil particles, and that's the reason it was seen escaping out. So such experiment is done to determine that soil contains some air. There is air in the soil. Therefore, the correct answer there was soil contains air. A group of pupils wanted to compare the rate at which water rises up in soil. They set up the apparatus as shown in the diagram below. Barrel tube, basin, soil R, we have J, and then we have K, water, and then we have cotton wool. From the result obtained by the pupils, the correct conclusion could not be made because the pupils, looking at the experiment, it was done to determine the capillarity in different soil. Different types of soil, they have different capillarity, or depending with the different types of soil. Since these types of soil, they have different soil particles. When carrying out capillarity, you require different types of soil, but the soil should be of equal amount. Also, you require cotton wool, which is equal. Also, you require water in a basin or container. You'll also require barrel tube of equal diameter, and also you require a watch because the experiment has to be timed. Therefore, looking at the experiment that the pupils performed, one mistake that they made, they used soil R. Soil R, it means that it's the same type of soil. So there was nothing that they could compare since the soil was the same. So the mistake that they made was that they used the same type of soil. The diagram below represents a setup that can be used to investigate certain component of the soil. We have a stand, we have source of heat, we have water, a glass, then it is covered. The component of the soil being investigated is, when you look at the soil, it has 5 components. These 5 components of the soil include air, water, there is also humus in the soil, living organisms, also there is mineral particles. There is also the mineral particles. Therefore, we can carry out experiments or different experiments to determine those 5 components of the soil. So according to the question, the experiment that was performed was meant to investigate water in the soil, or soil contains water. In the experiment, we have the source of heat, then we have the soil. Inside the soil, since we know inside the soil there is water, once the water was heated, during the process of heating the soil, the water evaporated. When it evaporated, upon reaching now the sheet of glass, the water condensed, and then it formed droplets of water or water droplets at the top there. Therefore, the experiment was meant to determine that there is water in the soil. Which one of the diagram below represent the correct setup that is used to compare drainage of water in different types of soil? When we are comparing drainage in different types of the soil, there are some of the things that we require. One, we require a funnel. Then we require a collecting jar. So we require funnel and collecting jar. Then from there we have, first we put the cotton wool. Then after the cotton wool, we have soil. After the soil, then we have water at the top there. So that is the correct arrangement of the materials when carrying out drainage. Therefore, the correct arrangement there is D, whereby we have the cotton wool, we have soil, and then water at the top there. The soil that drains water fastest is, when you look at drainage, the drainage of the soil is determined by the size of soil particles. The soil with the largest soil particles has the highest drainage. So when we look at the three types of the soil, that is sandy soil, it has the highest and the largest, it has the largest soil particles. Therefore, it has the highest drainage. It allows water to pass through it very quickly. So, looking at some of the characteristics of sandy soil, it has large soil particles. It has large air spaces. It has the highest drainage. It has the lowest capillarity. So using that information, then we can easily get the correct answer. The right answer or the correct answer there is that The soil that drains quickly or fast, or which has the highest drainage, also has the lowest capillarity or the poorest capillarity. Therefore, the correct answer there is C, that is has poor capillarity. The soil that can be used to make long ribbons as, when you look at the soil that can be used to make long ribbons, it means the soil should be sticky when wet. Therefore, the soil that is sticky when wet, it is the clay soil. So what are some of the other characteristics of clay soil? One, it is that it cracks when dry. Two, it has smooth texture. It has fine soil particles or small. It has the highest capillarity. It has the lowest drainage. Therefore, those are some of the other characteristics of clay soil that also helps it to make long ribbons. Therefore, the correct answer there is it cracks when dry. When a transparent bottle filled with garden soil and water was shaken and left to stand, layers formed. The order in which the layers formed depended on. So when you look at garden soil contains all types of soil particles. It has small soil particles. Also, it has large soil particles. Also, it has medium soil particles. They are not small, neither large. And finally, also we have humus. So when all this soil was put in this transparent bottle, then water was added and then shaken. These soil particles settled according to their density. The large stones that has large density went to the bottom. So if we have the container and assume it looked like that, the large soil particles settled at the bottom there. These are large soil particles. Then from there we have followed by the medium ones. And then finally the small ones were at the top there. So all this was determined by the density, of the soil particles. So the correct answer was A, that is the density of the soil particles. Which one of the following properties of clay soil would greatly contribute to flooding in an area? When you look at clay soil, is one of the three types of soils. Clay soil adds some of the characteristics that makes it waterlogged. Like, one, it has very small soil particles. Two, it has small air spaces. Three, it has the poorest drainage. It does not allow water to pass through it quickly. It has highest capillarity. It allows water to race through it quickly. It has high water retention. So those physical characteristics of different types of soil are the one that determines some of the properties of the soil. When looking at clay, since it becomes flooded easily, or what becomes waterlogged easily, all that waterlogging is contributed by poorest drainage. The soil does not allow water to pass through it quickly. It retains more of the water. Therefore, combining poor drainage and high retention, there are two characteristics that makes now the soil to flood. So the answer there is poor drainage. The main reasons why sandy soil is mixed with cement in building is because when you look at sandy soil, sandy soil is used in construction industry. The reason why it is used in construction industry, it is because it mixes well with cement. So what are the properties that makes it mix easily with the cement? When you look at the sandy soil, one, it has large soil particles. It is due to the large soil particles that easily mixes with cement. So due to its large soil particles, it mixes easily with cement. The table below shows observation made when 4 soil samples P, Q, R and S were mixed with water and then rolled out to make ribbons. We have soil sample and characteristic. P held its shape, Q cracked, R could not be rolled, S could not hold its shape. Which one of the samples has the lowest capillarity? When looking at different types of soil, they have different capillarity. Capillarity is ability of the soil to allow water to race. Therefore, the 3 different types of soil, they have different capillarity. When you look at the sandy soil has the lowest capillarity. We have loam soil, it has medium capillarity. Then we have clay soil as the highest capillarity. Therefore, when you look at clay soil, it is good for modeling, meaning that it is sticky when wet. So it could make the longest ribbon that could hold their shape. So looking at P, held shape, this one is likely to be clay soil. Cracked, also clay soil cracks when dry. We have loam. It can be rolled into ribbons, but the ribbons cannot hold their shape. Reason being that loam soil is made up of clay plus sand. So the clay particles in the soil are enabled it to be rolled, but the sand particles in it did not allow it to hold its shape. Looking at soil R could not hold its shape. This is likely to be sandy soil. Sandy soil, it is not good for modeling. One, because of its large soil particles that cannot stick together. Therefore, the one with the lowest capillarity was S. Soil S had the lowest capillarity. Which one of the following needs not to be the same when comparing capillarity in different types of soil? When comparing capillarity, there are some things that need to be the same. These things include: 1. Time allowed for the experiment should be equal time for all soil samples. 2. Amount of cotton wool. The amount of cotton wool used should be equal in all tubes. 3. The diameter of the tubes should be the same. 4. Equal amount of soils, but the soil should be of different types. So all those are some of the things that need to be the same when comparing capillarity. Therefore, looking at our question, the thing that need not to be the same is the amount of water used. Which one of the following characteristics of sandy soil does not explain why water drains through it easily? When we look at the sandy soil has some of its characteristics that enables water to pass through it or to have the highest drainage. Some of these properties or characteristics include: 1. Large soil particles. These large soil particles, when they combine together, they leave large air spaces. It is due to the fact of having large soil particles, it has rough texture. All those three factors are determined by the size of the soil particles. It is because of these large air spaces that allows water to pass through them. The large air spaces that are allowed, then the air is displaced by water. So water passes through them easily, therefore having the highest drainage, that it allows water to pass through it quickly because of large soil particles that determine the space that is occupied by the air and the texture of the soil. Therefore, large soil particles, large air spaces, rough texture all contribute to sandy soil having highest drainage. Therefore, shiny particles do not contribute in any way, making the soil to have the highest drainage. Which one of the following need not to be the same when investigating drainage in different types of soil? Drainage is the ability of the soil to allow water to pass through it. So when carrying out drainage, some of things that need to be kept the same include: 1. The amount of soil. But it's good to note that although the amount of soil should be the same, the soil should be of different types. 2. The size of the funnel. The size of the funnel should be of the same diameter. Cotton wool. The cotton wool used should be the same. And finally, time allowed for the experiment. Should be the same. It is good to note that the size of the collecting bottle should not be the same since we can use a standard measuring cylinder to measure the amount of water that has drained. So what needs not to be the same here, it is the size of the bottles collecting the drainage water. Standard 5, pupils added equal amount of water to 3 equal amount of soil samples J, K and L in funnels as shown in the diagram below. J, K, L. After 10 minutes, the people measured the amount of water that had drained through each soil sample. Soil sample J 28 cubic centimeters, K 19 and L 33. Which one of the following statement is correct conclusion from the results obtained? Looking at the drainage of different samples of the soil that has the highest drainage is sandy soil. It is the soil that is going to allow more water to pass. So according to the experiment that was performed, L was sandy soil since it had the highest drainage. Then we had soil K. Soil K had the lowest drainage, meaning that most of the water was retained in the soil and very little was allowed to pass through. So the soil with the lowest drainage is usually clay soil. Then when you look at J does not have the highest, neither does it have the lowest. So it is in between. So J is loam soil. So when you look at all those three different types of soil, they have different sizes of soil particles. So we have soil L as large soil particles. Then we have K, which has the low, it has small soil particles. And finally we have J, which has medium soil particles. They are neither large nor small. So using that information now, we can easily determine the correct statement. J has larger particles than L. Looking at L as large, this one as medium, so that one is wrong. K has large particles than K, this one small, large, also this one is wrong. K has larger particles than J and L. K, it has the smallest, so it is wrong. L has large particles than J and K. That now becomes the correct statement. The component of the soil that improves its water holding capacity is, when you look at soil, it has 5 components, which are: there is air in the soil, there is water, there is humus, there is living organisms, and there is mineral particles. Therefore, looking at the 5 characteristics that are in the soil, they are the one that makes soil to be productive. The one that usually make or improves the physical characteristics of soil, physical. That include drainage, capillarity, water retention, it is the humus. Humus is the one that improves the physical characteristics of soil. This humus is also called organic matter. Therefore, the correct answer is organic matter is the one that improves the physical characteristics of soil, that is drainage, capillarity, retention, and also the texture of the soil. Pupils investigated capillarity in different types of soil. Their results are as shown in the diagram below. We have soil X, Y, and Z. The level of water, the barrow-pen casing, then cotton wool, and then we have water. From the results, the soil samples X, Y, and Z are most likely to be. The question is requiring us to understand what is capillarity. Capillarity is the ability of soil to allow water to rise. Different types of soil, they have different capillarity. Therefore, we have three different types of soils that include the sandy soil, we have the clay soil, and then we have loam. All these soil, they have different capillarity. We have sandy soil as the lowest, clay soil as the highest, then we have loam soil as medium. This capillarity in different types of soil, it is determined by the size of the soil particles. Since each of these soils does not have the same size of the particles, therefore the soil that allows more water to rise most, it is the clay soil, and the one that does not allow water to rise or raises slowly is sand soil. Therefore, looking at the diagram, we can easily identify the soils. So we have X, Y, and Z. So looking at Y, it has the highest level. So Y is clay soil. Y, clay. X, looking at X, it is the lowest, so it is sandy soil. Then we have Z, it is loam, since it is in between Y and X. Therefore, the correct answer there is sand, clay, and loam. That is B. In an experiment to investigate certain component of the soil, water was added to the garden soil in a glass container. The component of the soil investigated was, when you look at soil is made up of 5 components. These 5 components, they include air, water, organic matter, living organisms, and mineral particles. So all those are the 5 components of the soil. So each of these components, we can perform an experiment to prove whether it is in the soil. Therefore, this experiment, it involves taking a glass container, then adding now the garden soil, and then water was added. After the water was added to the garden soil, bubbles of air were seen coming out. There were bubbles of air coming out from the soil. This was a proof that soil has air, or soil contains air as a component. That is, since air is less dense than water, and as the soil particles find in the glass container, they left air spaces. Those air spaces were occupied by the air. So they were displaced by the water and then they came out as bubbles. So this was to investigate that soil as air. The following are some activities carried out in an experiment to investigate drainage in soil. Equal amounts of 3 types of soil in separate funnels. Place funnels on the mouth of each of the 3 plastic bottles. Put cotton wool in each neck of each funnel. Pour equal amounts of water on each type of soil at the same time. Which one of the following is the correct order of the activities? When you look at the activities that are meant to investigate about drainage in different types of soil. Drainage is the ability of the soil to allow water to pass through. Different types of soil, they have different ability to allow water to pass through. That is drainage. So when carrying out drainage, first you have to prepare the funnels. After preparing the funnels, then you have to put cotton wool on the neck. After putting the cotton wool on the neck, then you have to place them in the mouth of plastic bottles. These plastic bottles will act as a collecting jar. Then from there you put equal amount of different soils. After putting that, then you are supposed to add water at the same time. Therefore, looking at the arrangement, it should be you pick 3, that is, put cotton wool in the neck of each funnel. Then after that, you are supposed to place the funnels on the mouth of each 3 plastic bottles, that is our 2. After picking, then you are supposed to pick or put equal amounts of 3 different types of soil, that is 1. And then finally you pour equal amount of water on each type of the soil at the same time, that is our 4. So it should be 3, 2, 1, 4. 3, 2, 1, 4. Therefore the correct answer there is B. Which one of the following methods of soil conservation can be used to control splash erosion? There are 4 types of soil erosion. They include splash, we have reel, then we have sheets, and then finally we have gully erosion. All those 4 types of soil erosion can be controlled or they can be prevented through different methods. Splash erosion that usually occurs due to the force of raindrops. It can be prevented by planting cover crops, also it can be prevented through mulching. All these two, they reduce the intensity of the rain drop. For the real erosion, this one can be prevented through contour, flowering, also terraces can be used to control real. Sheet erosion can be controlled through planting of trees, while now gully erosion can be controlled through building of gabions, or what you call check dams. Therefore, splash erosion can be controlled through planting of cover crops.